Hello, friends, and welcome to episode number 95 of Nostalgia Talk. I'm James, and joining me this time is the one and only, let's give her a big welcome, Annie Evans. She's waving hello.
Hi.
For anybody who doesn't know, Annie is a writer who is well known, of course, for her contributions to Sesame Street, writing various episodes, specials, and home videos, while also contributing to the Sesame Workshop Productions or Children's Television Workshop / Sesame Workshop. Their projects such as Big Bag, Panwappa, and the animated series Pinky Dinky Doo, as well as other animated shows such as
You've done your
Oswald,
research.
such as other animated shows such as Oswald and JoJo Circus. And in addition to that, she has jumped to the other side with writing for theater as well as television, such as the shows Annika's Elephants and All Hallows Eve.
I didn't write All Hallows Eve. I just
Okay.
produced that. But before I got on Sesame Street, I spent a decade in New York just doing off Broadway theater. So I started in theater, and then hit my 30s and really needed, to actually make a living. So that's when I moved into television. So.
Well, that's a great way to start, actually, because that kind of segues into my first question. How did you become interested in writing?
So I always kind of wrote. I think like a lot of young people do, when you're in school and you start writing little skits and little plays. And when I was in sixth grade, I wrote a little novel that they read out loud to the class and all these things. But I was first and foremost wanted to act like everybody else too. I wanted to be a triple threat dancer, singer, actress. But then by the time I kind of got into college, I sort of realized that I was okay at that and I had a lot of fun, but I could see around me people who were much better at that, but I was always writing little skits and things, and I was really good at that. So in college, I sort of switched over and started to write plays. And that's kind of when that whole world took off. And when I graduated, I went to Brown University in Providence. And when I graduated, I went to New York. I did a quick stint in LA and I didn't like it. So I came to New York and I started working in different theaters. And I was a casting director and assistant to the directors, and I just did any kind of job that was available in the theater while I wrote plays. And then the theaters that I was working with would then produce my plays. And then I started, it's a very small world once you get into it. And so I would be doing lots of things at theaters that don't exist anymore, actually, because this was like the 80s. And I sold one play for a movie, and it was a great life, and it was, burning the candle on both ends, and it was really a lot of fun. But, I just was really, needed something. My parents were both very ill, and I just needed something to be more steady. And then I met Marty at this National Puppetry Conference, and I was like, how do you get on Sesame Street? And he told me to write some skits, and I wrote up some skits. I'm old enough that I didn't watch the show as a child. I had older brothers and they had control of the TV set. So I never watched the show. So I had to sort of learn the characters and learn the style of the show in my, late 20s. And then once I kind of honed in on what I thought the characters I write the best, at that time I wrote some skits for Prairie Dawn and Monty, who was a sort of John Cleese character.
Yeah, I remember Monty, one of my favorites
really able
of
to
Marty's.
click into the sort of the musical style of those skits, and so I wrote a bunch of those, and Marty gave it to Norman Stiles, who was the head writer at that time, and he said, "Okay, you've got the ear, but you need to learn the style." And so back then, again, this was a long time ago, they had a training program. So he put me into this 1-year training program with about 5 or 6 other people I never met, but we were all writing stuff to sort of get on the show. And I think there was 8 of us. And then I was the last one left standing that didn't either burn out or, couldn't take Norman's criticism. And so at the end of that year, they hired me, and that was that. So then I was on the show for the domestic show I wrote for like 23 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was a big upheaval. And so then most of us were gone. But I still was writing on the show, though. I was just doing the live shows. During that 23 years, I did a lot of the international work and a lot of the live shows. So I was still doing that. But this now in the last year or two, I've sort of that's a wrap. in terms of Sesame Street, because I started to do Annika's Elephants, and I realized that at this point in my life, I would really like to circle back to theater.
Okay.
And bring, all those, a decade and 2 decades of learning about children. I don't know how much you've talked about this on your podcast, but all Sesame Street skits have educational curriculum that's attached to them.
That's right. Yeah.
We have as writers are constantly being given workshops and training and guest people coming to speak at curriculum seminars to learn whatever we're really focusing on that year. So I feel like I have a master's degree in children's preschool education, by just going to these for 25 years. So I want to bring that information into my theater world, and write more family theater shows that really are geared towards, educating and bringing more kids into to see theater and to sort of give them a love and understanding of theater as compared to television, film, or what they're seeing on TikTok. That's where I am as of today. September 20th, 2024.
Mm-hmm. So you said that you were writing plays before coming to Sesame Street, but of course, Sesame Street's as you said, educational for a younger audience. Were these plays more like for a mature audience, or
yes, they were definitely for adults. They were very comic.
Okay.
I would say that if you asked me what the style was, they were kind of in the world of like Nora Ephron, that they had a lot of comedy in them. The one that was bought for a movie was called Forgetting Frankie, and it was sort of about a woman who's had a heartbreak, and she discovers a man has asked 3 different women to marry him, and she gets obsessed with why some man would do that. And so it's a kind of a comedy of errors, comedy kind of, but with always a underlying heart, in the storyline that has its sort of dramatic arc to it, but always through comedy. I don't think I've ever written anything that didn't have laughs in it. But so I was definitely, and I did a lot of one act, the style of the one act play, which is why I think writing the skits came pretty easy, because in New York it was very at the time easy to get, like, there's a lot of one act festivals. There was a lot of small little theaters that would produce, your show that was 10 minutes long. So if you wrote one act, you really could get them up and get a lot of, energy going behind your work. It's much more expensive to, of course, produce a full length play. So I had a lot of background with that, but I have an anthology. Where is it? Of Hello. Oh, you can't. Oh, it's not backwards. Funny Girls, Coping with Boys. This is like all of my, the ones that were produced the most, one act plays and stuff. But they were all, for adult audiences. So moving to the kids was, but the thing is, Norman taught us this, and it was really important. And I kept that all the time. I never thought I was writing for children. That wasn't I was writing the characters. And I was writing their dilemmas, and because Sesame Street at the time, I haven't written the domestic show now for like 8 years, so I don't know where they are. But we didn't want to dumb down the kids, so we always had the adult humor, and that was so important when I first started. I mean, it is just that double edge thing with the monster piece theater and all those things was so important then. So I was always writing for just whoever's going to watch it, and just be true to the characters. And then, Norman would always say, it's like, write the skit and write it funny, write it, with a lot of physical humor. Kids always, want the physical humor. And then we'll find a curriculum. You can always find a curriculum, even if it's conflict resolution, in a skit. So I was always taught skit first, the drive first, the humor first. And that sort of, I think, kept me entertained through the, 22, 23 years I wrote on the show, because you're always looking for the laughs, and you learned, what was child appropriate pretty quickly. You're not stupid. You're not going to write swear words, and and if as long as it was physical, and the kids would watch. They'd be interested because they love the colors, and they love the energy, and so you just had to keep it going, keep it moving, that kind of thing.
Mm. It's funny you mentioned the conflict resolution thing when it comes to learning how to write for Sesame Street, because I've interviewed Norman on this podcast before, and also Lou as well.
Okay. Yeah, Lou was just he was such a love. God, those were my golden years. I mean, everybody has their golden years when they worked on Sesame Street. Lou was my golden years. He was just such a good writer and such a good head writer. It's so supportive of us. You know, he would go to bat for you if there was a bit that he knew was good and was really, he would really go to bat for it. I have a couple of stories that we went to like toe to toe with the producers. Like, no, we have to do this bit. This is a funny bit, and it's going to work. You know.
Yeah, I saw a documentary about Sesame Street that was in the 2000s where he and Judy Freiberg were meeting with the research people about one of the episodes. I think it was one of the hurricane episodes. Where
I did one of those. Yeah.
Okay, and it was where Big Bird realizes that his nest is now completely gone, and he's sad about it for good reason. And Gordon's like, "No, Big Bird, it's all right," and Big Bird's like, "No, it's not," and they were like, okay, well, we wanted to show that Big Bird's really, really upset, and Lou's like, well, this is just way too wordy the way that you're describing it to us. Like, why can't we just, like, we're not dumbing it down. Yes, we're seeing that Big Bird is really, really upset, and it's not all right, but it will be all right. But we see it. We don't need to explain that he's really upset. We can see it on camera.
See it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we had a show that I wrote that was called The Sink and Float Show. It was a classic show because...
is that the one where... Because I think I remember this from when I was a kid, where with Rocco and like
it's Elmo. Elmo. Yeah. And it's Elmo's literally, they're just deciding, like, there's no plot drive. It's just Elmo and learning what can sink and what can float. Mm-hmm. And it was, whether the leaf can float, can we put something on the leaf? And it was very much, science, and it was very much in the curriculum of the day. And the producer, the main producer at that time, says, "Oh no, we can't do this. This isn't not active enough." And we're like, "No, they're going to be mesmerized. They're going to watch it." And we fought for it. And he finally just said, "All right, fine, we'll try it." And then it became like the showpiece of that season, and all of the curriculum people who came to visit this, and do the curriculum seminar, they all saw it like, "Oh, this is perfect. This is, and it's because Lou is like, "No, this is, yes, it doesn't have a driving plot, but it's still going to work." And we were totally right.
Lou told me, and this is something that he and I laugh about all the time, that when he first created Baby Bear, it was first supposed to be a one-shot character, this traditional, just this traditional fairy tale character comes to Sesame Street, and then suddenly Norman's like, this character is hilarious. Why don't we include more of the Baby Bear and Goldilocks thing? Because Lou described it as a sibling rivalry, but a lot of the producers were like, there's way too much conflict between them, and Lou's like, yes, that's the point, because we already know that they don't like each other.
Yeah, siblings fight. That's how it works.
Yeah, and Lou kind of felt the same when Curly Bear came into the picture. That one of the producers was like, "But that's ruining the story. It's the three bears. It's Papa Bear, Mama Bear, Baby Bear. We're adding someone new to this traditional story." And Lou's like, "It's not the traditional story. It's our version of the story."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Way to go, Lou.
Lou really, Lou was it was great. I loved my time with him.
I'll tell him hi for you.
Okay, thank you.
Oh yeah, we talk all the time.
I haven't seen him in a couple of years. We'll have some regathering, like often, sadly, for like a funeral or something, and we all see each other, and it's lovely, reconnecting.
I did a video once that was focusing on the Slimy to the Moon series, and I asked Marty, would you like to come back for that, because you did Slimy, and then I asked Lou, would you like to come back and talk about being in charge of the whole thing? And I did it separately. When I told Marty Lou is involved in this, he was like, wait, Lou? I haven't seen him in ages. I was like, Norman helped me connect with him.
No, it was great. Yeah, I did my in the Slimy ones, I did the Space Skateers show. So there was like, we had to do something with the people who were on the ground and watching. So we did a whole episode with Big Bird, Space Skateers going to the moon, and it was an episode that was part of the Going to the Moon section, but it was its own little standalone with the little kids all dressed in their little outfits, the bird outfits with space helmets on. It was cute.
So after you got on Sesame Street, after you were, as you said, the last one standing in a group who could take Norman's, you say criticism, I say passion, because Norman definitely knows what he's doing. Do you remember your first ever contribution to Sesame Street?
Yeah, my first show was it was a very small show. It was
Okay.
Big Bird, and it was the mouse that ran out the clock. The clock is broken, and he can't run up the clock. And so Big Bird, they bring it to Louise to fix the clock, so it strikes one, and the mouse runs down. So it was a very simple, fairly simple show because it was my first, and I actually have, where is it? Is it here? This here, I'll give you some visual aids. This was my first show. So this is the script. This was Carol. This is how Carol would mock up the script. And he would circle his parts, and then he'd put two feathers in, and I put it in a little frame. So
That is so cool.
First, it says, "Nice script, Annie. Big Bird, Carol Spinney, August 31st, 1995.
Wow.
Yeah, I started training in 1992, 93. I wrote my first, this first season for 94, and we shot it in 95. That shows how long it takes to get things going.
Damn.
Yeah, back then it would be like a year before you would get it on set. Yeah, and then I have another. This one's completely different, but this is the Noodles. This is Mr. Noodle, Judy, me, and Molly.
That's cute.
Yeah, that was so.
You all look very, very nice together.
Oh, yeah, it's Derek Jeter, Bill Irwin, and the three girls who wrote. There was other people who wrote Elmo's World, but the three of us wrote a lot. Judy, of course, the creator, head writer. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, you brought up Carol Spinney, and a lot of the time when you're writing for Snuffy or Telly, most of the Sesame Street writers that I've talked to, every time I ask, do you have a favorite character to write for, they usually always say Telly.
Because he has the most anxiety, and so
yeah, and like Mark Saltzman, I don't know if you know Mark, but
I actually came on after him, but
okay.
I certainly know his name. Yeah.
Okay, when I asked him, he said Telly because Telly's us. But mostly when you write for Telly and when you write for Snuffy, it's hard not to include Carol's characters, like Oscar's relationship with Telly, Snuffy's relationship with Big Bird. I mean, everyone always talks about how hard Big Bird was to write for because they have to go into kids' point of view, and that's kind of tough when they're adults. At least that's what I've heard from people like Mark and Belinda Ward and Lou Berger.
Because he was every kid, but he didn't have like a lot of trauma. He was more like,
other than losing his nest. Yeah,
that's why. And those were actually the easiest times I had to write for Big Birds was when there was a little bit of a issue where, like, writing the hurricane shows. I did a show where radar is missing, and they had to try to find radar, and they're sort of tracing back their steps to find radar. And so Big Bird had a lot of it, anxiety about that. So that was a little easier to get more writing, get some good, some good scenes out of that. What other good, and then it was also then it was fun to write for him if it was like a skit, like a Muppet insert where we did some of the vaudevillian ones where it was Big Bird and Snuffy, and they were sort of doing like jokes and because then that was a different style. It was, it was very specific for, like, we're teaching up and down. Or I did a show where Snuffy's back there trying to compare his front feet and his back feet, and which was bigger. Like, so, like, really, like, sort of silly things like that. Then there was a nice ability to have a repartee between the two of them. So those were easier to write. So.
Mm-hmm. So what was it like to have worked with Carol Spinney all these years?
It was great. He was a real storyteller. He would sit, in his little chair, it was with the orange legs, because he always would have those on the whole day while he didn't have the bird on, and he would, wax about the, history of puppetry, nostalgia. He was a real, he was a talker, and he liked to, talk about all the things that he went through in his career, and so if you sat down with Carol, you just knew you were going to kind of listen and enjoy his nostalgia, his history.
Mm. Yeah, it would have been perfect for him to come on the show, Nostalgia Talk.
Great on that show. Yeah. Oh my gosh! I mean, he would have. he would have just been, talking all about, from how he started meeting Jim, because he met Jim when he was much, much younger, than when I met him. And he started, and he had a whole career before that as a puppeteer, so he would have just had a great time doing podcasts.
Well, speaking of the OG Muppet performers, one of my favorite stories that Marty tells is when he got Snuffy for the first time. And I think it was either Dulcie or Lisa Simon who said to him, Jerry's going to be here on set if you want to talk to him and ask him about Snuffy. And Marty went up to Jerry and said, hey, Mr. Nelson, I'm going to be playing Snuffy. I'm really looking forward to getting started. Do you have any suggestions? And Jerry goes, yeah, kid, start smoking and start drinking. Which, like everyone often says, one of my previous guests was Billy Barkhurst, who did Ernie for 3 years. And he had described Jerry as somebody that you'd want to sit down at a bar and have a drink with. And of course, Lou often says the same thing about Jerry, that he was like one of those guys that would just sit there talking about his career. What was Jerry like to you?
Well, Jerry was just very sweet to me. I mean, he just, a couple of times we went up and visited them in Cape Cod and stuff, and he was just a sweetheart. But he was a musician at heart, and he had a musician's sort of sensibility. So he really enjoyed just chewing the fat at a bar and talking about life and particularly music. Towards the, I don't know if someone has mentioned this before, but towards the end of his life, he did an album.
Yeah, I have it.
Oh, you have it? Yeah. And so,
I love listening to it on boat rides.
No, so we all contributed. Everybody. I know a lot of people. Marty. I'm not sure who all went to the studio when it was being recorded to do some songs with him and stuff. But that was his real love. I think. I mean, of course, Sesame Street paid the bills and had an amazing career. Having just watched, Marty and I only just recently watched the Idea Man documentary. You see a lot of Jerry, in the Muppet Show stuff, and how crazy and fun they were all having. But I still think he was always, still playing the guitar and doing his music all through that, because that was kind of his thing.
I'm glad you saw that documentary. Marty asked me what I thought of it, because after I saw it, I got a hold of everybody I know at Muppets, and I'm like, have you guys seen it yet? And Marty's like, I haven't, but I'm assuming you did. What did you think of it? I loved it.
Yeah. I thought it was beautifully edited, and a lot of the drawings and the art in between it, is all sort of reminiscent of Jim's drawings. I mean, I don't know how much they actually pulled directly or how much was created to give that imagery. But I thought that was the most sort of wonderful thing about it, was how they weaved everything together. I mean, there wasn't anything that was like earth-shatteringly new to me, because I had spent many, many, many years listening to Jane Henson and do her presentation, she did the legacy things for, many years when I first started. And I'd seen many of those clips. There was some new ones, and that was really great. And there was some new, that was what was exciting, some things I'd never seen before. And there was some audio that I had never heard or seen before. And that was kind of great, because there was some of the specific Sam and Friends things that I had seen several times in different incarnations. But I have to say, it was probably one of the better docus that I've seen about the Muppets and things, But it was,
yeah, I second that.
Yeah, it was Ron Howard. So
Oh yeah, Ron Howard's phenomenal. So some of us would consider people like Carol Spinney and Jerry Nelson like celebrities in the Muppet world, and because they do a lot of the classic characters. And that makes me wonder, do you have any celebrity stories from Sesame Street that you'd like to share about guests that have come on?
Well, I loved working with Bill Irwin. I mean, that was incredible. I mean, he's not a celebrity like, but most anyone in the theater world knows him. And Derek Jeter doing the I'm just looking over there at the picture of him. He's an amazing man, amazing performer. I loved being deeply involved with that. That was great.
I thought his name was Michael Jeter.
No, Michael Jeter. Yeah,
I was going to say Derek Jeter's the baseball player.
He's a baseball player. Michael Jeter. You're right. Thank you for the correction. I'm in my 60s. And
all good.
Yeah. Alison Krauss came on. I wrote a bit for her. And speaking of Jerry, Jerry specifically requested when he found out she was going to be a guest to be part of a bit. So I wrote a bit for the Count and Alison Krauss to be together when she was on. And I think that was just a wonderful day at the studio because Jerry was so happy in meeting her, and she had the Union Station members there, and they just gabbed away with Jerry. And I think she had her daughter there, and it was just very friendly, a very nice day at the studio. So that was kind of wonderful. I remember when Liam Neeson was going to come on, and they had a closed set, but I hung out anyway just to see him.
Which did you write any of the Liam Neeson skits?
No,
okay. Because Belinda Ward, when I interviewed her, she said that she wrote one, and I remember him doing two of them.
No, I didn't. I don't know who wrote the other one, but no, I just was like, oh, I just want to, because I had something that was shooting before that, so I just hung around. I'm trying to just think if anything else pops up specifically, but I mean, I did something for Backstreet Boys, but I'm too
one of my favorite bands.
Oh, really? Okay, it was like I did the Backstreet Boys once, but I'm too old to. I had to literally. They said, "Oh, can you do this one bit with the Backstreet Boys?" I'm like, "Who are they?" And I had to listen to their stuff to write up a bit for them because again, I'm in my 60s, so so I did that. So but I wouldn't consider that for me a celebrity thing, you know.
Oh, I would.
I know you would, but yeah. So no, I'm more Alison Krauss and Liam Neeson. So, Bill Irwin, you know, my God, Bill Irwin.
I'm still pretty like taken aback there that you wrote for the Backstreet Boys. That's amazing.
And NSYNC came on, so I think
that's right.
I mean, I could even be confusing. I know if I did the NSYNC one or did the Backstreet Boys, or I did both. I can't remember.
Well, NSYNC did Believe in Yourself. Backstreet Boys did One Small Voice.
Okay, I can't remember. I had to be honest. And I used to make fun of Marty because when I first started writing, I would say, "How can you know?" He'd say, "Oh, I don't remember that skit." You know, it's like season by season. He's like, "It's out, it's in, it's out." You know, I don't remember. And then after about 10 years there, I was like, "Did I write that?"
I remember doing the Slimy to the Moon video. Like when I said, "Marty, do you want to do this video about Slimy to the Moon?" And he's like, "That was a long time ago."
And literally, I mean, even the Elmo's Worlds, it was like they were putting together a whole bunch of them for back when we were still releasing DVDs, you know, and they had like 3 things assigned, and I had one of them was like wild animals or something. I said, "Oh, I did wild animals. Oh God, that's right, I did wild animals." Yeah, it's just like you get it really. I mean, I think I've written 400 shows, or and bits and stuff. So you just don't have the capacity to retain them all, except for when it was a specific, like Alison Krauss. So it was a specific thing that would trigger my brain, And I remember the earlier ones more than the later ones because again, those were my first ones. So I was much more scared about being on set, and so I was like I remember when I first did a bit for not Jerry Nelson, for Frank Oz, and I was terrified. And he was he was a sweetheart because it was a clock thing. We had to do something within 1 minute, and they're actually doing it in real time, in a real minute. So when we were rehearsing it, we realized that there were some things that it was over a minute, so we had to cut. And so we were like working together to make sure that it timed out perfectly, and we were trying to decide what was funny and what research wanted, and and when Frank's on the set, it's always about what's funny, Yeah. And so. And it was great. I mean, I was able to edit this thing like right next to him, in the right there in the studio. And then I also did one that gets done a lot in like international with Jerry. That was talking on a banana, and it's this Ernie and Ernie's talking on a banana, and Bert thinks he's out of his mind. And it ends up then with Bert like chatting away on the banana.
And then Ernie picks up the phone. Oh no, he's talking on the banana.
Sorry, can't answer. He's talking on the banana. Yeah, that was mine. And so we were having a real fun sort of trying to figure out what the final sort of like, funny twists would be and bits, and like which would be the best funny line to end it on, and what he was saying, because he was mostly just improvising, just right through the end. Like he had my line, but then he just kept going, And so I would say like those memories are just precious to me actually, because after a while, Frank, he was busy with his directing career, so he didn't come on as much. And then they finally put in Eric to do things when he wasn't available. And so it was pretty much, that was my ending of working directly with Frank. so I really had a couple of really good, on-set memories with him. So he won't remember it all. I do.
Yeah. That's really nice. That because you joined after Jim and Richard had passed away, and so there were So there were very few of the OGs that were still there. Carol was, Jerry was, Fran Brill was.
Yeah. Fran and I got to be, really nice friends, and still are, we still, talk, text each other, email once in a while from when she's down south. Yes. All those last ones were definitely in my circle of people I like to write for too, whenever when I could. I mean, I really liked writing for Prairie Dawn. So I did a lot of pageants, particularly with Lou. Lou and I, we would always try to get one pageant in, until it just, they just didn't want to do them anymore. But I think I wrote like 2 or 3 pageants, and we just had so much fun with this. You know what I'm talking about, right? The welcome.
Oh, yeah.
Hey.
We're ever so glad that you joined us today.
Yeah, because
of course, usually the pageants, the Muppets would totally always completely break character on stage, either due to stage fright or there was one where it was a flower, and here is a young man who calls himself Bart, and Ernie comes on. It's like, well, actually, my name is not Bart, my name is Ernie. Ernie, just sing.
Both Lou came out of theater too.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and so both Lou and I really like to do the kind of things that would sort of pull on our expertise in playwriting and theater. So that was always a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. So earlier you showed me the photo of you with the Noodles and Judy and Molly on the Elmo's World set. You co-created Elmo's World. What were your contributions to co-creating that? Because I know that it was like Judy's idea.
It was originally Judy's idea in one of our breakout sessions that we had, trying to fulfill the need to have more eyes, screen. Because I mean, as we were moving on, and as Sesame Street started, and there was one show, Mr. Rogers. And by the time I came on, there was like 70 shows of kids that we were competing against, and so there was a lot about where we were in the rankings of shows. The producers, of course, were going to be more anxious about than we necessarily were. But Elmo's World was specifically geared to trying to capture some of the younger audience, but keep it Sesame Street. And so Judy came up with that idea. And then they basically asked anyone on the staff who wanted to help create the pilot. And so I wasn't in that first breakout, but then I said, I'll help, And so there was like 9 of us or 8 of us. And we met every day for like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and hammered this thing out. And to be honest, to ask what my personal contribution is, I have no idea anymore, because it was always back and forth. I mean, Tony Geis was, very close with Judy, and they worked in movies together, I think, as you know. And so they had a really good repartee. So they were able to, come up with ideas. And we had lots of things that we always knew it was going to be science, and it was going to look at a topic from all different angles. And we had, all the different kind of suggestions. And there was one that we really wanted to try to fit in that I know I was pushing, which was a sort of storytelling section, telling some kind of a story based on, what the topic was. But then I think we ended up realizing we would end up being a box that way, trying to eventually find stories where it was much easier to do, like, can I talk to a truck, or can I talk to a, dog? That
I guess it would be like more intriguing to like when the subject is let's say fish, like Elmo's the one talking about fish, but he doesn't know what goes on inside of a fish's mind. He's just saying what he thinks thinks goes on. So yeah, then it's like, you want to talk to a fish. Yeah.
And that was also one of Judy was very very strong about making sure it was from Elmo's point of view. It had to be everything had to be something that Elmo would have thought of. So she was really, really clear about that, which is why it made it so pure. And the show was very, very Elmo and simplistic, but sophisticated in its own way, because she really, she said, he wouldn't think of that. He wouldn't think of that. She was always nixing ideas because of that. I know we all took turns typing. Because back then, we had one computer, and Emily Kingsley and I would go back and forth, typing in things and typing in dialogue, and we would shoot out lines and stuff. So, I mean, it really was a collaborative effort that way. I mean, that's why Judy also insisted that all of our names were on the first pilot, you know. So,
So it was you and Judy and Emily, Tony, Kathy Turo told me that she was involved.
She was there. Belinda.
Okay. Molly Boylan.
Molly, yeah. And we were the ones that continued writing them too. Like she was, there was, I mean, every once in a while, I think Joey did one, and I think John Wyman did one, but it wasn't, you know, they weren't the original core, and I think that they just did one. Said, okay, that's fine, I did that, you know. Again, I can't remember all of them, but I know our little core group did most of them, you know,
okay.
over the like 7 seasons or how many seasons we shot it, you know. I would usually do like 3 main stories and then like 2 Elmo's Worlds or 1 Elmo's World for many years, in terms of dividing up, you know, the staff and how many shows were available and that kind of thing.
Okay. You also mentioned Judy Freuberg, who very sadly is no longer with us. And that's a name that in the Sesame Street community, you know, we don't hear a lot about. Even though, you know, we should because her contributions are very important. Like look at Elmo's World. I mean, like kids, I remember when Elmo's World was new. That's when I was very, very little. She co-wrote the first ever Sesame Street feature film. You know, she was there from the 70s up until she passed away. What was she like?
She was lovely. She was lovely. She was very committed to the show. And had really strong opinions about what was Sesame Street and what wasn't Sesame Street. Very creative. And you know, and we had a group of women. We would go out. I mean, what's sort of sad is like a lot of them are no longer with us. Arlene and Lisa Simon, Judy, myself, Molly, Nadine Zylstra, a bunch of women. We'd go out and have a sort of women's night out. And that was always really fun, and you know, Judy was always a big part of that. And you know, I think that there was a couple of times when she was like, "I'm so dried out, I'm so done. I've written so many scripts," you know. But then she'd rally, and then she'd hand in great scripts. She also had wrote not only Emma's World, a couple of times she had wrote the regular show when Lou had gotten a pilot or something with HBO or something, and so she split the duties with Joey and I think Belinda. And they brought in someone from LA, and that didn't work out. But so I did a couple of shows with her, and she was really, you know, really good and really consistent, and made sure that, you know, it was a Big Bird. Oh, and I think she helped write the hurricane shows, because I have a memory of her and me working out the dialogue for when the nest got blown away.
Like I saw in the documentary with her and Lou,
and just exactly how Big Bird would respond to that, So it was, I think they co again, it was so long ago, but I believe they wrote some of those.
Talking about stuff like the hurricane, you know, like in the 50+ years that Sesame Street's gone on, it's tackled some pretty heavy stuff. And that's something I've talked to Norman and Lou and Belinda about. Like with Norman in particular, the death of Mr. Hooper. I mean, every kid, no matter how old they are, they're going to have to hear eventually that they lost a family member, or they lost loss is unavoidable. And then adoption and birth and then the hurricane, of course. Has there ever been a moment during your time at Sesame Street that you felt like the most proud?
Well, you know, yeah, I have, but I wouldn't say it was necessarily on the domestic show.
Okay.
I think the most proud I was when we did the show in Bangladesh. Okay. And that was me and Marty and Nadine Zylstra, who's no longer with the company. She was the producer. And we first went to South Africa, and it was right after 9/11. And so we couldn't get the Bangladeshis visas at that time and to the United States, because they were being very Islamic phobic. But we could get them to South Africa. So we all flew to South Africa to help create the show from scratch. With you know, I guess the company that came was about 8 of them. You know, the person who was the 2 executive producers came, and the head writer of that season. And we made the show. they're in this room, and I mean, these big pieces of paper down with the different kinds of characters they wanted. Because how the international shows work is they make half the material is Bangladesh created and written with their own characters, and then they take the other half and they dub the American show. They choose the stuff that they want to put in their show, and then it gets dubbed into to Bangla. And so we created that show there, and then we all went to Bangladesh and auditioned writers, auditioned puppeteers. Marty was there, and we did a whole workshop where we had some of the writers write skits for the new characters. They were still being built, you know, it was all was being created. And I think I'm one of the few people who've been to Bangladesh like 8 times, you know, and it became a real big hit. And they actually had proof that it actually helped increase young kids going into school, their literacy rates and things like that, because the show existed. They had no show for kids at all in Bangladesh. They only watched like soap operas with their parents and stuff. And then they actually had a rickshaw with a TV set, and they would drive it into the countryside and bring kids from villages in and watch the show. It was just so cool.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So I would say that is like one of my proudest things, because it was a really groundbreaking, you know, I came into the show when it was already a big freaking hit, you know?
Yeah.
And so my contributions there were more for myself and making a living and having fun and enjoying the gift of Sesame Street. Going to the other countries, you know, I went to Indonesia, I went to Mexico, spent a lot of time in Bangladesh. And then we also created one for India, very similar, but India was a very different animal, you know. But I actually lived in India for a month in the hotel, International Hotel in Delhi, helping them with the head writing of their first season. So, you know, those things are sort of the more groundbreaking things were, I would say, my proudest contribution to the world of Sesame Street.
Wow, that's mind blowing. Wow, that's amazing.
And Indonesia was interesting too. I went to Indonesia like 3 times to work on the show there. Yeah. So okay. It was, that one I sort of stepped in. That was already sort of, no, actually I was pretty much, I was still doing the first season. So yeah, it was still the very, very beginning. But my kids had been born then. And there's a certain point then where, I mean, economically, it wasn't a moneymaker, you know, to send all of us into these countries. And then once Zoom Korea was created, and it's actually Skype is what we started doing, they started to not send us to the countries because it was just, you know, extremely expensive. And the priorities of the higher ups of the company were changing and changed, so that they don't really do that at all anymore. I mean, Marty has been all over the world so many times because of that, but he even hasn't traveled in years to any of the countries. They do it Zoom wise. You know,
yeah, I mean, nothing's too far away these days.
Yeah, they don't do that at all anymore, I don't think. But again, I'm not there, so I don't know. But back in the glory days of international, Gary Null, when he was the CEO, he was very much interested in the street that goes around the world. That was his big thing. And so he was really into, that's what Pamwapa Island was about, you know, that Sesame Street is a global entity. And that was very big during his era. So and we were Marty and I were both very lucky to sort of land right in the center of that. Molly Boylan did a lot of them too. She did a lot of the European countries, and I did a lot of the Far East. So it was great. It was really great.
So eventually Elmo's World came to an end and turned into Elmo the Musical, which is the more flamboyant version of Elmo's World, I think. Yeah. But I mean, to be honest, like, having Elmo on the show at all, like, and like, I don't know if you know this, but Sesame Street is changing its format next season. One of my most recent guests was Ken, the latest head writer, and we were talking about, we were talking about
a new woman named Halcyon, and we'll have never met, but Marty's very excited about it.
Okay, well, there we go. Ken told me that he was leaving Sesame Street, but there we go. First exclusive name there. Yes. Wow. Okay.
He's talked with her a bunch of times. So I know he's excited about her.
Okay, well, there we go. To any Muppet Wiki editors who are listening to this. So Ken and I were talking about that kind of change in the show, and my understanding of Elmo the Musical is that Sesame Street, because Elmo's World was targeted at very, very young children, Elmo the Musical was meant to focus on at the time, current curriculum of Sesame Street, which was science and math. It was trying to get more into that. So how did it all happen that you mixed Elmo the Musical with the curriculum?
Okay, again, I have to like think back.
Okay.
we had a small group, groups meeting and developing the shows and coming up with ideas. And that was really getting towards the end of my stay there. But I mean, I was gone when Joey was gone. But I think we did 2 or 3 seasons of that. You know, and it was the same thing. I mean, we just work as a team and come up with the best ideas or vote down the ideas. You know, it's a little bit of like, you know, whose idea is better or worse, or just this one is, you know, it seems to generate more ideas, those kinds of things. My first musical one was the Western one, okay. In the Wild Wild West, or I can't remember what it was called. It was
probably Wild West. I think it was Cowboy the Musical.
It was Cowboy the Musical. That's right. Good for you. You know more than I do.
And they were all. It was like the Elmo's World. Like whatever the focus was, the musical.
Also, I remember about that show, and besides going to the studio, I think, and recording the songs, was that when I wrote it, we had no power. That had been an ice storm, and so we have a wood burning stove, and so I literally parked myself in front of the wood burning stove, and with my computer, and we had to go and like charge our stuff in the car or Starbucks or something, and I literally sat in front of this wood burning stove and was writing it, and then also the I'm in Reading, but Ridgefield, Connecticut Library had a generator, so everybody was piling into the Ridgefield Library because we were out of power for like 10 days to charge up and write there. So I wrote some of it in the Ridgefield Library, but a lot of that episode is more about how the hell do we survive without electricity for 10 days, and also Joey. I remember handing it to Joey, and he was happy with it. So I was like, well, thank God, because I wasn't really, you know, completely 100% focused on it, because I was also making sure my kids, you know, were warm and things. So, but you know, of the two, I mean, Elmo's World is more ingrained in my head because it was a much longer development process.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we really were in that room for like a month, I think, by the time we did the first draft, and then we got our notes, and then the second draft, and then they said, okay, we're going to do it. And you know, and then one of the reasons why it stopped was, I mean, I'll never know all the reasons, but it was extraordinarily expensive to do because of all the animation and things. So I think a lot of it was like, we've got plenty in the bank. You know, we had a lot of shows, and I think because I had written one that never got shot, which is to this day makes me sad. It was Elmo World Trucks, and they had already built a truck for it already, and they just didn't have the money to shoot it. And so it never, and they said, oh, maybe next year, but then they didn't budget for Elmo's World in the year after. So it never got shot, but it was a great little show. And they, you know, and they had a Muppet truck that never got used until someone read, you know, we got this, a Muppet truck. Has anybody got anything? So, and then the truck ended up showing up into other shows after I had left the show. So at least they got to use the darn truck. But that was sad, because I thought that, I thought Elmo's World Trucks would be a very successful episode, you know. So that's my last thing about Elmo's World.
Mm. So you've also written for, as I said in the intro, the animated shows, JoJo Circus, Pinky Dinky Doo, Oswald. So what's the biggest difference for you? Because you've also written for theater. So when it comes to writing for puppets and writing for animation and also writing for theater, what are some of the biggest differences for you?
The biggest difference that I had with, say, with Oswald, you know, I think Oswald might have been my first pure animation.
Okay.
I'm trying to think back. Because JoJo might have been, you know, around that same time, but JoJo was stop action, you know,
right.
Stop motion animation. So there still was limitations on what they were willing to have us do, and what they could accomplish, you know, again, budgetarily and things. But Oswald was just pure animation. So I came to realize like I had a thing where he was in a bathtub and the bathtub, exploded and something happened, it's like I could write anything because it's animation. They could explode the bathtub. They could, I mean, I did a show after I was at Sesame Street for Josh Selig's little airplane show that was a duckling. It was about a crazy duck. And, I shot that duck through a sign, sort of like, Looney Tunes where, it leaves the impression of the duck. And I had never been able to ever write something like that because you really couldn't do that on Muppet stuff.
I mean, kids would imitate it way too easily.
Yeah. And I mean, there's always a tension of, it's still, do kids think they're kids or think they're Muppets? I mean, the kids know they're puppets. I mean, there was a great show that Nancy Sand wrote where Elmo gets smushed against the door, and the researchers did not want that to happen. It's like, they know he's fine. They know he's a puppet. It's like, don't underestimate the kids. I think they kept it because it was like, come on, let us have some fun, This, again, a long time ago, though. I can't speak for what they do now. But that was sort of freeing for me with Oswald. It's like, oh, yeah, I can have him do anything. I did a lot of Oswalds that season. And I had one that was a car race. And it was, and so I could have these cars do anything, that I wanted them to do, and wheels fall off and fly this way and that way and tumble and stuff, because they truly were, a flower, and a wiener dog, and a big octopus. So, kids are really not going to know and are not going to think it's them tumbling in a truck, So we had lots of different. That was kind of a little freeing and entertaining for myself to go, oh, why don't we try this?
So with JoJo's Circus and Pinky Dinky Doo, those two were created by the legendary children's television producer and animator Jim Jenkins. I've interviewed a lot of people who've worked on Doug and JoJo's Circus, PB&J Otter, and they've always said that Jim Jenkins is such a wonderful human.
Jim Jenkins is a wonderful human. And whenever I talk with him on the phone, because he and I spent a couple of years, like 2 or 3 years, just getting on the phone and chatting about ideas to see if we could come up with something to do, together, because we just loved working together so much. And we pitched one thing, and then he gave me something that he'd been working on for decades and stuff. And nothing really ever came of anything. But whenever we were on the phone, I would laugh so hard. And there's something about that. He and I would set each other off. Marty would literally come into the room and say, "You're talking to Jenkins, aren't you?" We would just crack each other up and just laugh and laugh and laugh. He came and saw Annika's elephants down in Tryon. And, oh my God, it was so good to see him. It was just so nice to and it came down and it was like, does everybody know who that is? That's Jim Jenkins. Because we had a talk back thing afterwards. It was like, he created this and he created that.
I said to Pat Giles, I don't know if you know Pat, but he's art director on Jim's shows like Stanley and PB&J Otter, Doug. And
I didn't work on those ones. Yeah, but I worked on Pinky. I did a lot of Pinky. I did 3 seasons.
And I said to Pat that Jim is basically the Norman Lear of children's animation, because like all of the shows that he created were such a big hit, but nobody knows that he created all of them. And it's the same with Norman Lear's shows. Those shows were a hit, but nobody has connected the dots.
Again? Yeah, I know. Allegra's Window. It's just Marty,
I keep forgetting about that one, Allegra's Window.
Marty loved working on Allegra's Window. That was his first time sort of being, a creator of the puppets, a puppet designer, and working on the show together, because he never worked in the Muppet shop. He was always a designer, but it was always Little Shop of Horrors or other little things he did, but never anything with Muppets. So that was really big for him to like be given that, that much responsibility. It was wonderful.
Yeah, he makes some pretty cool puppets. Like I recently asked him, I'm doing for any of the listeners, I'm doing a top secret video. And I said to Marty, would you be willing to contribute something to it? And he's like, well, what do you want in it? And I'm like, oh, whatever you want. Like I gave him the basic idea for the video, which again, can't say. And he actually took a little clip of a puppet that he built, this clown puppet.
Yeah, Clowny. Yeah.
Okay, that's his name. I never knew that, and I was like,
that's his main like sort of puppet he uses to like wish people happy birthday and stuff. That was in All Hallows Eve because it doesn't have any copyright on it. He can't use any Muppet stuff or anything, So Clowny.
Yeah, that's one of that's one of the things that I'm always cautious of when it comes to having guests on here who do character voices or puppets. Like, I always try hard not to ask them to do the voices because they don't own the characters. I don't own the characters. It's just, if they want to do the voices, fine, but I'm not going to pressure them.
Yeah, no, he can do Clowny to the clouds. Till the clowns come home. Till the cows come home.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, I think I remember when he shot that. Yeah, because that was for you to put together with a video. It was a clever idea. It was like you have like an idea that everybody then contributes something to it or dialogue to it or something.
That's right. Yeah, a couple of previous guests are helping me out with this. Yeah, again, top secret video that should be out soon.
Forward to seeing what came up with. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think I helped him sort of with some of the ideas and making sure he got all the words that you wanted in there and stuff. So, every once in a while, I'm not a puppeteer. Never do I try to pretend to be one. But every once in a while, he's just short an arm. So I will do, particularly during COVID. I don't know if you ever saw the video he did during COVID under the telly underneath the covers. It's on the Sesame Street web. Yeah. So that's my voice as his mom, and then I put my arm in, and I'm doing the arm stuff, and then my daughter's turned on and off the camera so that because that was all just shot at home with the family. So I will do sometimes little red arms and things like that, but nothing serious.
Or maybe even cameos on Sesame Street. Sometimes, like a lot of the crew just walks by.
Yes, they do have cameos. We had a cameo, of course, with our babies. If you watch the Twin Show, it's up on you can find it on YouTube. It's Twin Day on Sesame Street because Chris has a sister. So,
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I wrote the Twin Show, and then we had Peter Linz's twins come on and actually perform on it. And
I've met Peter's family before, actually. Yeah. So when I watched that episode after meeting the family, I was like, oh my God, those are his kids.
Those are his kids. And so Marty and I have a cross through with Lyra and Ripley when they're literally babies. They're dressed the same, and we just sort of walk through as part of Twin Day.
That's cute.
So I think that was my only cameo. I think that's the only time I actually was on set. The girls that were on then, and then they came on and did another cameo. They were sitting in the back of Hooper's eating, drinking smoothies, and they learned very quickly that television is actually extremely boring. Because they had to be there all day, sitting in Hooper's pretending to drink smoothies. So they're like, I don't need to do that again.
Yeah, I recently was an extra on a series, and I can't really reveal too much about it, but I get to the set. We get asked to go to the set once I get to where they were keeping the extras. And most of the shows I've worked on camera or behind the scenes, the sets are all previously built, even outdoors. And we were on location in the middle of the street, and no one knew what in the world we were doing. And one person kind of heckled us while the camera and sound was recording.
Oh, jeez.
And so the director's like, okay, yeah, let's just cut bait. And so they got all of the scenes that they needed to get done simultaneously. And so I went back to the holding and was never called back again. The whole group was never called back again that whole day.
You could be there for 5 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours, and never get called at all.
Yeah, got back home at 1 a.m.
Yeah, we have a roommate. We have an apartment in New York, and a friend who's an actor who stays in the other bedroom. And whenever he's not doing something, he'll go in for extra stuff. And yeah, he'll just sit all day long, has his computer and get stuff done. Records other auditions. While waiting just to go on the set for 10 minutes. But it's a great way if you're an actor. His point is really really great. If you're an actor and you're a working actor, you go work. You don't just sit around waiting for the job to come. So he goes all the time to those extra calls to just because he's an actor. Right. So I thought that was a really great way to look at your job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, show business.
Yeah, it's show business. You do your business.
Yeah, I told one of my friends.
Whether you're cast as a lead in a show,
I told one of my friends I was waiting for 10 hours. She's like, ew. And I'm like, welcome to show business, my friend. This is what we do.
You do, yeah. Sit around and wait.
Yeah. So that's all I've got here. Is there anything you want to say to finish?
No. It's been fun to reminisce. As I say, because particularly since, as I said, I'm sort of my trajectory of career is sort of moving, back the circle of life back to theater. But I can never ever thank Sesame Street enough for all that it gave me in terms of education, in terms of making a living, in terms of friendships, world travel. It's all the kids television I did. Sesame Street by far is the most glamorous of them all. But I had lots of fun on some of the other shows too, particularly ones I did with Jenkins, and also JoJo Circus had a great head writer, Jeff Kindley, who is retired, and I loved working with him. He's still with us. He's just writes books now. Was a great inspiration head writer. Again, if a head writer protects you, that's all. That's so important. So I never had any issues because it was Disney, and Disney can be tough, and they had a lot of pulling and pushing from the East Coast, West Coast, and he just protected me from that, and I'm forever grateful.
That's sweet. Well, thanks for coming on the show. I really do appreciate your time.
I'm not show number 95. You've been busy.
Yeah, we've got some lined up all the way to triple digits. I will say that.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
that's exciting.
And to all listen.
I look forward to seeing your movie because I know all about the idea. So because Marty was telling me about it and I was helping him out. So
awesome, yeah. And to all listeners, you guys know where to go for announcements of future Nostalgia Talks. You already know about some of the future guests. We've got Denise Oliver from Treetown on Treehouse TV here in Canada, Wayside, Sidekick, among many other Canadian animated shows. She's an incredible voice actress and voice director as well, voice caster. And we've also got J. Paul Zimmerman from the Disney Channel Halloween Town series, just in time for the time of year that it is now. Fall is on the way. And of course, a lot of Halloween videos coming out, looking back on previous Halloween, or should I say nostalgic Halloween related projects. I'm looking forward to sharing those with you, and I'll see you next time. Peace out.
Bye.